All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. As always, we are brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. If you are looking to get in shape before the fall hunting and trapping seasons, don't waste any more time and go sign up today. Use the promo code OKAYEST30. That's all caps OKAYEST30 for a free 30-day trial and get started now. Now, my guests today are a couple good old boys from the great state of Pennsylvania who enjoy hunting, fishing, trapping. Their podcast, The Keystone Experience, covers their tactics and the equipment they use to get the job done season after season. On top of that, there's some cool fellas who are doing their part in painting trapping in a positive light. Rob Warwick, Matt Pitzer, welcome to the show.
What's going on, buddy? Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I'm in Idaho. I'm not from Pennsylvania. I spent some time in the Southeast growing up, but where does the name Keystone Experience come from? What does that represent?
So Pennsylvania is known as the Keystone State. And the
The
way
beer, or is it something else? Because that's about the only thing I know about Keystone.
I don't know much about the history. I know that Pennsylvania historically is known as the Keystone State. Why? I don't know. We'll have to Google it later. We do have Keystone beer.
Yep.
Which,
That's
you know,
pretty good
younger
addition.
days drank a lot of that. But the way we actually kind of came up with the name, the Keystone Experience, was we had a local TV show. We were part of a local TV show here that was called Keystone Wild Outdoors. And I don't know about Idaho, but in Pennsylvania, aside from fishing, there is no hunting, trapping, anything like that in the summer. So Rob and I kind of came up with the idea to, hey, let's have a podcast so that we can keep the TV show relevant throughout the year. You know, nothing worse than working hard and having followers, and then you lose them over 3 months because nothing happens. And
That's awesome.
we just kind of came up with that name.
Yeah, we asked a bunch of guys on the team one night. We're like, hey, we're going to do a podcast. Give us some name ideas. And the Keystone Experience was probably, I don't know, probably had 10 or 15 guys that liked that one. So we just said, okay, that's it. There we go.
Too cool. Well, it's catchy as all get out. Like I caught myself saying it over and over again. It's a catchy one. So I think you guys did a good job on that. Now I know you guys, you know, with the show, with the podcast, have your hands in all sorts of different honey pots across the hunting, trapping, outdoor space. And as you know, trapping is very close to my heart. So I want to start with asking you each a question, and I'll start with you, Matt, and then Rob, you can answer afterwards. But I'd love to know what each of yours first memory of trapping is.
Oh, this is an easy one for me because I just started trapping last year.
You have to pull back too far in the memory bank then.
Exactly. Now, Rob's going to have to dig back some years here, so his answer might take him a while. So it's a good thing he decided to go with me first. My earliest was last year. You know, Rob has slowly over the years picked away and got me interested in it. And we took my boys. I have two boys that are 11 and 9. And last year was all three of ours first year. So Rob has taken the time out of his schedule to come over to my buddy's farm, show us how to do it, where to put it, why, you know, the whole 9 yards. And I won't ever forget the first day we went to check it and had what I like to call, you know, raccoons. We call them Rickies here. And we had a Ricky in the trap, and the boys were with us, and, you know, 17 raccoons later and a couple of red foxes, we had a pretty good first season.
Wow. Yeah. That is that's a good haul. Were those mostly dog proofs you were using for catching the Rickies, or did you have a number of footholds and snares? What was kind of the first season setup that Rob had you guys on?
So we started at our one buddy's farm, and we did a lot of dog proofs. We really like the Duke dog proofs. They're really easy to set. And you don't have to worry too much about catching non-targets. We did do some footholds at the first farm, but the main farm that I trapped is my buddy's, and they have a ton of cats. So we did a couple of footholds there, but quickly I realized that that was not the correct thing. I got tired of letting cats go every couple of days. So I did primarily all Duke dog proofs last year for raccoons. We had some, you know, fox and coyote traps out, and Even the raccoons managed to find those, which was really aggravating.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be mad. I'm like, nah, it'll be okay. No, I was mad. They're pretty much nothing worse than spending all that time trying to set up for a fox or a coyote just to have a fat old raccoon come in there and ruin it.
Yeah, man. And you had your kids with you, which is awesome. What did they think of the experience when, they came up on their first critter in a dog proof?
They loved it. I was nervous for them to go into it because it's a big commitment. You got to check them. We have 36 hours we have to check.
Yeah, we have 36-hour check.
So but we try to do it every single day. And I was really proud of them and all the work that they put into it and checking them mostly every day. And they loved it. They were always excited. We started putting some of our cell cams over the traps. So there were nights I didn't get any sleep because I already knew that there was a raccoon in the trap at 11, 12 o'clock at night. And we'd get up the next morning and they had a blast. They really did. And they're excited for it this year. And we took my youngest Colton to his first rendezvous this summer, and he had a great time. And it's been an awesome experience and can't wait to get going this year.
Yeah. And before you answer what your earliest memory of trapping is, you mentioned that you took a little while. It took Rob chipping away at you before you finally jumped on the bandwagon last season to start trapping. Why was that? Like, did you have a reluctance to it from the time commitment, from the perception of it? What was it that was holding you back initially?
I would say it was more the time commitment. It wasn't the perception of it. I mean, being an outdoorsman now for over half my life, I understand the necessity for it. And a lot of people don't. They have a negative view of trapping, and it's not a fair one. There's a reason why it needs to be done. And it was more of a time commitment thing for me. And to a degree, I didn't necessarily want to play with all that stinky crap.
That's a fair one. My wife would totally agree with you on the stinkiness of my workshop, even the one I'm sitting in right now. But Rob, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what was your earliest memory of trapping?
Oh, my grandfather got me started. I was 12 when I first started, and he had his own farm. And the agreement with him was whatever I caught, I had to skin and I had to eat it. So,
and did he hold you to that?
Oh yeah, he did. The very first animal I caught was a possum.
Oh, and how was the flavor?
I'd rather eat coyote bait than ever eat another possum again in my life.
Oh boy.
My grandmother cooked it, and sweet potatoes, the whole 9 yards, and it was the most disgusting thing I ever ate in my life. It was nasty, but I never quit. I just kept going. Once I got that first animal in the trap, it was just nonstop from there. And when I started, we didn't have a big coyote population. We had, our area is known more for gray foxes. So I put a hurting on gray foxes from the time I was 13 up to 18 years old. I mean, I bought my first deer hunting rifle, my whole first hunting outfit, 13 years old, and walking around with $800 in my pocket from trapping.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what years that was, because guessing that it was probably around that fur boom of the late 70s, early 80s.
Yep.
And you could, I've talked to so many people who were paying their mortgages or buying a truck or doing something just from part-time trapping during that time when the fur prices rather were much better than they are today.
Yeah, I remember taking my gray foxes. The first year I caught 6 gray foxes. I took them to the fur post, and I got $600.
That is not an insignificant amount of money for how old were you at the time again?
13 years old. A 13-year-old kid standing there with $600 in his pocket in a trapping store was, And I said to the guy, I says, I said, that 30-30 on the wall right there looks pretty nice. He's like, yeah. He's like, we can work a deal. He said, how about all them raccoons for that 30-30? I said, it works for me. So I got that. And then I gave him $100 for a box of shells, a scope. And it was all downhill from there. I've been doing it. And I tell Matt every year, this is it. I'm done. I'm retiring. I'm going to let the young kids do it. I just can't step aside. It's in my blood. I have to do it. It's not for the money anymore. It's just I have to do it.
And, Matt, with your first season now under your belt, I have a question for both of you. It'll go back to Matt first, and then Rob, I'd love to hear from you. What was outside of just the checking, right? What was the most difficult thing about running your trap line? And then Rob, I'd love to hear what's the most difficult from you every season that makes you kind of think like, man, I just want to hang up my traps, but then, why you keep coming back every year.
So for me, the most difficult part was, I knew I always had Rob. I could call him and he would come help me. He got us started at my buddy's farm. He came over and showed us, hey, look, here's this trail. This is a good spot for this, kind of laid everything out. But after a week or two, in catching stuff, you hit that lull.
Mm-hmm.
And you start guessing, okay, do I move them? What am I doing wrong? You start getting frustrated. You're like, man, it's been 4 days now. I haven't caught a single raccoon. How did I catch 4 last week and I haven't caught a single thing now? And then you start, you're taking the boys and you want them to be successful, because to me, there's nothing worse than taking a kid into the outdoors and them not being somewhat successful. To me, there's no way of ruining them faster than, hey, we're going all this work every day. The traps are empty. Mm-hmm. That's going to get old quick. So for me, that was the hardest part, was when I would hit those streaks of a couple of days with nothing in them, and then trying to find new locations, but still not really knowing where to put them, kind of just guessing and getting lucky here and there. But that was the most challenging part for me, was trying to figure out, without calling him or having him come back over and, show me why this wouldn't work here. That was the challenging part, was that lull. And, all right, day 5, got to get back up at 4 a.m. now. Let me go check these traps that are going to be empty, because I haven't caught anything, because I suck at trapping. So,
and you just narrated my internal dialogue every morning of trapping season. And what about you, Rob? What is it that is the most difficult year over year that makes that little devil on the side of your shoulder say, just quit? Don't do it next year.
I'm getting old. I get up every day at 1 o'clock in the morning. I start work at 3. I work till noon. So I kind of got a pretty easy, but I'm 54 years old. It kind of starts to wear on you after a while, and the cold days and the rainy, miserable days, after a while, it wears you down. But like I said before, you're either born a trapper or you're not. You can't turn somebody into a trapper. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people that wanted to help me so bad, and then when we get on a roll and we start catching 30, 40 animals a month, and then you're in the shed every night till an hour before you got to be at work, and they don't want to do it no more. They quit quick, it's not worth the money. Well, it's not about money anymore. It's about taking care of the other critters that need to be taken care of because of the overpopulation, because there's not enough trappers, and we need to get more kids involved. Will I ever quit? Probably when they put me in the ground. That's about it.
Yeah. That's I like what you said about being born a trapper. Obviously I didn't grow up in a trapping household. I'm more like Matt, as an adult, kind of on-set trapper myself, but I do believe you're right. There's something in the blood, because when you do find success, it comes with its own burden. It is not just, hey, I'm successful. It is, now I've got even more hours to suffer and work to make sure that I'm taking care of the animal in the way that it needs to be taken care of. And it is unbelievably draining. like you said, every season. But there is something about it that is, when it gets its claws in you. So sorry, Matt, you're probably screwed now. You're going to be back season over season. But welcome to the Suck Fest, I guess.
Yeah,
then,
it's a lifestyle. I don't know if you ever heard of what's her name, Lida, who has tight chains.
Lydia Reichenbacher.
Like I said the other day, I put a post up about her clothing. Her clothing is not a clothing line; it's a lifestyle. Trapping is a lifestyle. Like I said, you either like it or you don't. It's one or another. I don't know who's making noise. Probably.
And question though, that lifestyle, like you guys are what I would say all are well-rounded sportsmen, right? You're out bow hunting, rifle hunting. Rob, considering that you started trapping when you were 13 or 14, really before you were able to buy like a 30-06 and go deer hunting on your own, do you think that all of your time spent trapping made you a better hunter? And then Matt, I'd like you to answer the same thing, but just from your perspective on this last season, like all the recalibrations you had to make in those moments with those rickies, like did that change your perspective on hunting in a short time? But yeah, Rob, I'd love to hear.
Trapping has definitely made me a better bow hunter. Definitely a better woodsman, period. I mean, we're trying to take an animal and make him step in a little 6-inch circle, and when you can start consistently doing that with deer, during bow season, bringing them in during the rut and getting them within 20 yards to take that shot with a bow or a muzzleloader, whatever it be, you start paying more attention to trails. You start paying more attention to the way the animals move, the body language on the animals. So I would say trapping makes you a better woodsman. Definitely, for sure.
Awesome. And Matt, what are your thoughts after first season?
It was a very humbling experience. I felt like I was a pretty good hunter and a pretty good woodsman. No, I was wrong. You think, I primarily hunt deer and turkey, and I thought I do good with them, but it was crazy and very humbling to look at it, how he sees it and see the different trails and understand how those animals are moving and why they're moving that way. Now it's kind of one of those things. It's hard to walk into the woods and not notice it. I also never spent more time looking for crap in my life.
Yeah, it is one of those things. I think now having trapping is an integral part of my life. If I go out hunting or I'm in a tree stand, I'm looking at things that I wouldn't have looked at before. Maybe it has no impact on the animal I'm trying to take, but maybe it does. But you're noticing all those little things from crap or where ground nesting birds are and where those rickies might be getting into them. And frankly, it's kind of distracting. So for anybody out there who wants to get into trapping and you want to have like a clear mind for hunting, like keep the separation of church and state if you can, because it can be equal parts annoying as it is beneficial, I think.
Yeah.
And, Rob, since you started in Pennsylvania, early teens, I'd love to hear your perception of how the trapping culture has changed since you were a kid getting $600 in your pocket for some gray foxes to now, because at the beginning you mentioned about we need more ewes and trapping. My buddy Matt Brophy's there in Pennsylvania, helps with some of the youth trapping work. And, I fully agree, but it's also one of those niche things now where it's really on the outside of the periphery. So I'd love to see how the culture's changed in your lifetime and where you think it is now and where we should be taking it.
Well, when I did it, we did it because, Pap or our father or whoever did it. So it was a family tradition thing. And I hate that word. Matt knows I hate that word, the family tradition, because Pennsylvania is a state that is known for traditions, and we need to break that, because that we'll go down a whole wormhole. I start on that, but trapping, when I did it, you did it to preserve the chickens, the pheasants, the rabbits. That's what we were doing it for. It really wasn't the money, but the money made it that much more. It made you want to get up for school, go check your traps before you went to school. You know what I mean? Come home, take care of what you had to do, go reset. That kept me going as a teenager, kept me from doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing, and then now I just think families have lost touch with the outdoors altogether. I understand. I mean, my kids grew up playing baseball, softball, but I made them make time to go in the woods. You have to, you just got to get away from the everyday grind of things and get in the woods and clear your head. I mean, that's the way I look at it. That's the way I'm going to do it until I die. It's, to me, this is my lifestyle. You'll see me on a Harley Davidson ripping down a highway somewhere, but my mind is always on being in the outdoors.
And for the kids too, like you said, your kids rode that line. Like I expect my young kids to ride that line. Maybe Matt, you're in the same position with your kids in their, 8, 9 years old, of they have to be adapted to doing sports and other social things, but finding that right balance. And, my experience is trapping can do it in a very small window, right? Like it is a big commitment with your checks, but it's also not like a big, long sit in a tree stand. It's not necessarily a big backcountry hunt somewhere where you're packing in mules for 10 days. Like I think it's one of those things, if you can get the interest and find the success, like you said, Matt, it's something you can do pretty close to home in a lot of cases. And I think that's really good for the kids too, especially if you don't have the time to get out for longer hunts or your kids just don't have the patience for it.
Right.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't run a super big line. So the boys and I can go check it and be done hour and a half tops, depending how many things we catch. I mean, if we don't catch anything, we can be done 30, 45 minutes, doesn't take super long for us to do it. And they enjoy going out and checking them. And it's a good time just to spend with your kids. And that's why we are trying to push for more kids to get involved. And they don't have to do it their whole lives, but it's just good family time.
Yep.
And what I think is pretty cool about it is if you take it to the completion, right? And I don't know, Matt, if you guys, after catching some of those raccoons, skinned them out, tanned them, maybe made like a coonskin hat, but the versatility of catching fur and what you can do with it is pretty cool. At least like with my daughter, she loves when we catch beavers and otters and we get them tanned and she can snuggle up to them and do all these cool little things. And, she sees that full circle. But did you guys end up doing anything with some of the fur you guys caught last season, or in the process of it maybe now?
We are in the process of it now. So I have 17 raccoons, 1 red fox. Rob has our other red fox plus what he caught.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is how we're, he showed me how to do it and we're teaching the boys. You're not just out there to catch it and kill it.
Yep.
You've got to respect that animal and treat it the way that it deserves to be treated. So we are going to start here next weekend and start thawing out the hides, and they're already in the freezer ready to go. But yeah, we're going to make some fun stuff with it and, create more memories.
I'm gonna teach them how to do a little bit of taxidermy work. The 2 red foxes, because I used to be a taxidermist for a while, so I'm gonna teach them how to do that. And yeah, so
that is no small amount of work. My guest last week was a taxidermist here in Idaho, and just to touch on like skills and woodsmanship skills and trapping specifically having tangible monetary value out in the market, is there's not very many trappers. And like your friend Matt, like you're doing it pro bono, so you have a place to go and trap raccoons. But I still work a normal 9 to 5, but I lost my job last year. It was the first time I'd ever been through a layoff. And, I unfortunately grew up in the generation that was, was college at all costs. The trades are for chumps. And I believed it. And I went to school, and I had, up until I started trapping, I frankly had zero worth or skill in the real world when you look at it. But what trapping gave me is when I lost my job, I was actually able to, pay our mortgage through trapping. Now, the amount of hours you have to put in today to pay your bills with trapping is an ungodly amount.
Yeah.
But it was able to be done. And to your point with taxidermy, the other thing I did is I was working at a taxidermist.
Mm-hmm.
And that is no small amount of work. So I'm really interested. I'd love to see how the foxes turn out, but like adjusting the forms, doing the wet tanning for that, it is a lot of work. So hats off to you for having that experience too. And Matt, I'm sure you're brimming with excitement on just having that well of experience to tap into, especially for your kids to do some stuff with the furs and do some full mounted taxidermy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Rob's been one of my best friends now for 5-6 years, and I'm unbelievably grateful for the time that he takes showing me stuff and the boys. We just, this past weekend, we went and set turtle traps, snapping turtle season. We went and set those out with the boys and went and did that, spent the rest of the day fishing, and then he took us and we went catfishing for the first time. So I'm always grateful and thankful that he's willing to take that time and show me, and I know I can call if I've got questions. And the taxidermy, I'm going to leave that up to him, because watching him, the first red fox that we caught, watching how he had to skin that out, I'm like, okay, that is out of my wheelhouse right now. Maybe in a couple of years, like I'm trying not to butcher this raccoon, and that I'm not trying to do fingers and toes and everything, but it's something to watch.
Yeah. So Rob, were you actually like deboning each and every knuckle and getting it down to where everything was paws on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Taking it all the way down so that there's nothing to do but split flesh and, do a little bit of sewing on some holes that, you're going to make. It happens.
Well, I actually want to ask that specific question because, most trappers, most of the season, right, they're doing their trapper dried, basic skinning, fleshing, getting it on a board, taking it to the fur market, selling it. But every once in a while, myself included, you get a whopper of an animal and you start to have those thoughts like, maybe I should have that fully mounted. But as I found out, I just went ahead and skinned and boarded an otter that was beautiful, a 35-pound otter. And, I took it to my taxidermist and talked. He's like, hey, man, like I could maybe do something with this, but it's going to be a lot of like patchwork. Cause I'd already like taken off the legs. I'd split the lips. I'd cut the lower jaw off, just normal trapper stuff. So from your perspective as an ex-taxidermist, if someone comes up on a critter that's just like, yeah, I want this mounted, what would you suggest them to do from a skinning perspective?
You can get on Mackenzie's website, Mackenzie Taxidermy, Mackenzie YouTube channel, and look up how to skin for full body mount animals. I mean, it's not that difficult. Most of them are split down the back. A lot of them, if they're going to be standing mounts, you do them under the belly. I prefer splitting them down the back because that hair is longer on the back, so you can hide stitching better. That's the way I've always done it. And, splitting around the lips and stuff like that, get back in there, get the gums lines out and everything, and go down to each individual knuckle. Trust me, you're gonna screw a bunch of them up before you start getting them right. I mean, I was blessed to, study a lot of years under some pretty good taxidermists, and then I did it for 15 years on my own. And then it just got to the point where, customers were starting to stick you with animals and not show up, because it was that time where, people were losing jobs and stuff like that. And it was it was time for me to go back to being a real working human being and not having a leisure of running around in the woods all day long and then coming home and mounting a few deer and paying bills, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can find all that stuff on YouTube. I mean, a lot of times too, if you just go to a taxidermist and say, "Hey buddy, I trap, show me how to skin something. If I catch it, I'll bring it to you. You can mount it, but I want to learn how to skin it."
Hmm.
Most of them will take you up on the offer,
Yeah, that's good advice. Always make friends with your taxidermist anyways. And if you can make their life easier, that'll probably pay off in the long run. Now, same question for both of you. I'll start with you, Matt, since it's recency bias. What was the biggest mistake you've ever made on your trap line? Clearly, it was the one from last year for you, Matt. But Rob, start thinking about what the biggest mistake of any trap line you've run was.
Biggest mistake. Well, I had plenty of mistakes. I don't know if I can necessarily say one is the biggest. I guess the one that sticks out in my head the most is make sure that your pistol is fastened in your holster. Because I didn't hear it snap, thought it was in there, remade the set, 2 sets, started walking back to the truck like, uh-oh, where's my pistol?
And was it like a back end, like 3 sets back, just laying
Yeah,
there in the
it
dirt?
was 3 sets back. When I knelt down, I must have sat funny and it just fell out. I would probably say that was my biggest one. It was, I mean, obviously there were a lot of mistakes made, just not having right locations, but I wouldn't consider them big. I mean, I was kind of either, hey, something's in it or something's not.
Yeah. Binary. It was either on or off.
Yeah, it was one or the other. And also learned not to tell my buddy's wife that I caught a cat. She would get upset about that. So I guess we can classify that as a mistake.
Yeah. What and who we tell, non-target catches, even if they're released completely unharmed. But yeah, for people who might not have the best perception, it's definitely something to keep on.
She was really cool. She was really cool about it. None of them got hurt. They all ran off. They're still fine. And she understood that, Rob and I went over and talked to them and they said, yeah, that's fine. And we kind of explained like, hey, we might, and unfortunately they live at a farm that people just drop cats off. There are an ungodly amount of cats at his place that live outside. And we said, we might catch a couple of them. And she was really cool about it. But I did learn, after the first 1 or 2 I caught, okay, she doesn't need to know it all the time. And fortunately, we catch maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
We didn't do as bad as I was originally thinking.
Well, it's also a hat tip to like Duke traps or any traps that have offset jaws. Like, yeah. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions of trapping is, that it's not an ethical means of retaining an animal. But when you have chain, you've got swivels, you've got all sorts of stuff that I'm sure Rob walked you through. You can really release these animals, no harm, no foul. And especially when you're doing 36-hour checks or less, or in your case, daily, like you come up on a non-target animal, you can really just let them go and they're no worse for the wear. And I think that's also a good thing to show people that, it is an ethical means of retaining an animal because they're not lethal. And if you catch something you're not supposed to, which happens, you can let it go.
Yep. If you trap, you're going to catch a non-target animal. I don't care what you're trapping for. You're going to catch one. I do a lot of duck hunting and I had Labrador retrievers and I would set a Duke trap in the yard and let the dog step in it and show people, look, and he's running around the yard with the thing on his paw. Like he, walk over to him, take it off, show him, look, it didn't hurt his arm. He's good. No skin broke, no nothing, and cats, cable restraints. We're allowed to use cable restraints here in PA. And everybody knows cats have a very, very soft, larynx and windpipe. And I couldn't tell you how many cats I catch in a cable restraint and take them out. Don't have no harm, no foul,
Yep. Especially with those breakaways and some of the other, newer cam systems on those cable restraints, you know, they're about as safe too. Like, even though that's supposed to be a lethal device, you know,
Right.
when you get a non-target, if you're doing it correctly, you know,
I mean, I caught my first year doing cables. I caught 2 deer
yep.
around the neck. How that ever happened is beyond me, because I mean, I set them for foxes. So why these deer had their face to the ground running the way they were is beyond me, but I caught 2 deer.
Mhm.
And both of them deer were turned loose, not hurt, no nothing. So, you know, it just shows that these companies do think of this stuff, you know.
Mhm.
And the one cable was actually the breakaways broke.
Mhm.
So, you know, I had him on cell cam that I'd caught him, but when we got there, he was gone. The cable was laying there, broke like it was supposed to do, and moved on.
Yeah,
But
it's
my
pretty.
worst mistake as a trapper.
I'm excited to hear this one. That was a great question because I've never asked him this, so I can't wait to hear this answer.
I tried beaver trapping by myself because a
Mhm.
lot of people that I used to trap with were older and they passed on. And so I was out checking one day by myself, and I had forgot where I put a conibear. And I used 330 conibears, and I was not thinking, I was feeling around with my hands,
Mhm. You
and
found it.
I got both hands stuck in that trap in the river, chest deep water, trying to get myself out.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. And I wired that trap to a root. So I was trying to break wire while both arms are stuck in a 330. And I'll tell you what, I thought for sure that I was done. I got loose 45 minutes later, waders full of ice cold water to no beavers. And I have not beaver trapped since.
That's a good way to turn you off the beaver trapping. That's for sure. Man, like, and as people know, like when you use conibear, you know, it's a lethal trap as well, and it's swift and it's ethical. But man, when you get one of those stuck on your hand, it's not a fun
No.
experience. Much less being in cold, probably winter water.
Yeah. Yep. December in Pennsylvania in the water is not fun.
Oh yeah.
You know, that story just made me think of another mistake that I had last year. Not marking my traps in wide open fields.
Oh yeah.
I literally spent the better part of 6 hours with a metal detector searching through a field for one trap at the end of the season. I
That
found
is
it.
brutal.
Yeah. And it wasn't so much about the trap. I mean, I was petrified that my buddy was going to run it over with his tractor or get it stuck in an implement. And the last thing I want is something I'm doing on his farm and he's letting me do to cause more damage. So that was a mistake. And I even asked him, I was like, how do you figure out where your trap is? It's really easy here in Pennsylvania in the fall and early part of winter when there's no snow.
Mm-hmm.
But then when there's snow and then it melts and your buddy runs his tractor through there 4 or 5 times, it all looked the same. And it took me about 6 hours and a metal detector to find that trap. So I have to find a better way this year to mark my coyote sets that are in the middle of a wide open field.
gas line flagging, them little flags. Those are the best thing, because them animals don't care about that. They could care less about it.
Where was that information last year?
Hey, yeah, we got to learn the hard way. That's how it goes. That's like up here, you know, I ran into similar problems wolf trapping where, you know, I've got like these no BS, you know, white traps, and then you get a foot of snow on top of something. And if you don't have like it well marked, the landscape will look completely different the next time you go snowmobile in there. And you're like, is this the same planet? Because I'm pretty sure it was over there, but I'm not entirely sure. So I think that's a great lesson learned for people listening too, especially newer trappers, is, you know, flaggers, tape, flags, or whatever it is you can do to mark where you set traps, because nothing is more anxiety inducing than knowing you have a trap out there and not being able to account for it?
Yep.
Because I didn't know where it was for a couple of weeks, but I still had time. But when the season was coming to an end and it was time to go, I was praying, like, I don't care if there's one animal in any of my other traps. Put an animal in that trap so at least I know where it's at now. And nothing ever found it.
Yeah.
It took a metal detector.
And that was even tough.
It was. You'd be shocked as to how much a metal detector picks up random crap in a 6-acre field.
Yeah, I'm sure you had some like tough forearms after that. But next question, also related to lessons learned, same format, but what's the biggest mistake you've made in the fur shed? So, Matt, I know this was your first real season kind of skinning out critters. So love to hear from you. And then Rob, like taxidermy, everything else, you probably got to go back further in the Rolodex to think about your biggest mistake.
Mine was probably being more confident than I should have been. After watching him do 1 or 2 of the raccoons and then him being there for when I did my first 1 or 2, the third and fourth, and I've got them, they're in the freezer. I already know which one they are because I wrote bad on the bag. I would probably for me, it was being more confident or like, okay, I got this. I know what I'm doing. Then I'd get down to the skull and the face and the nose and just completely cut like half of it off. I'm like, okay.
So was it a patience thing, or was it just the small game knife handling skills that just come with time, or both?
I think it was not knowing exactly where to cut, how to get around the eyeballs, how to find that spot where the ear on the raccoon is to where you can make that cut behind it and not cut the ear in half. It was probably more than knife handling skills. I was yelled at a lot that it's not a saw.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we use Weeby knives and they have replaceable blades because I dulled a lot of blades on some raccoon skulls this year.
Yeah.
But that would probably be my biggest mistake, was being too confident. Like, okay, I got this. He made it look really easy. And then it was also easy the first couple times he was there because I could just turn around and be like, hey, it's right here, right? Like, that's where I need to cut. And he'd come over. Yeah. Okay. And then I remember trying to do it on my own. I'm like, okay, I think nope, that wasn't the spot. Now I have a raccoon missing half a face.
Oh man, it's tough. But in talking about skills that translate, I think for me, still being a hunter, like field dressing animals, you'd be surprised the correlation between even small critters and deer. Like deer and field dressing it, especially if you want to like cape it out for a mount or something, after you do so many small critters in your fur shed, that becomes just like no factor. They're a lot more lenient on mistakes too. So like, doing a big bear or doing a deer or elk or whatever it is, it's cake after you do it for quite a bit in your trap line.
Yep.
And what about you, Rob?
I would have to say just plain old getting lazy, letting them sit too long.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start to slip on me, and then just ruin an animal because I just was lazy and didn't feel like fleshing them or skinning them that night or whatever, figure, I'll catch more this week and I'll just do all of them at one time. Well, by the time you get back to that one 4 days later, even though it's 35 degrees, it's not frozen in your shed. You pick it up off the floor. Well, that part that was laying on the floor was warm. You roll him over and there's a big chunk of hair laying there because now he's starting to rot. So I think that was my biggest problem. And now I don't, that was when I first started, just get lazy and wouldn't do it. And now I know you catch them, get them skunned, put them in a freezer. You can do them in the summertime, because the fur market, we all know the fur market is horrible. So you got all summer to play around with them, And me personally, I prefer doing raccoons in the summertime you know, because you get that grease off of them really easy. Wipe everything down with acetone while they're drying,
Mm-hmm.
and your hides are perfect, you know. And then come the time when hopefully somebody wants to buy them, you got good hides to turn around, you know. And a lot of the ones that he screwed up on too were blue early season, you know, and that's everybody screws those up. You know, I still screw them up. Get in there whipping that knife around like you're some kind of, you know, chef or something like that. And next thing you know, you whack an ear off, half a face. But it happens.
Yeah, it's all learning, and anybody who claims to be an expert is probably a liar.
Yeah.
The mistakes happen, but the thing I love about trapping is like fitness or anything else is you can get reps in. When I talk to people who want to get into hunting now, and like my biggest hurdle when I started hunting again, because I didn't grow up in a family, was like the fear of field dressing, the fear of like taking care of that meat. I wish I had started in trapping before, because you can build those reps. If somebody wants to get into hunting for meat or for whatever it is, and you have a fear of that, work with small game, run a small trap line, practice, because they do translate up. And I think that's just an underrated skill. If you do it the right way, like you said, and you're not lazy, and you trap them, skin them, put them up. It'll breed a really special kind of confidence when you go into the deer woods too. You have to handle that yourself.
I mean, I showed them guys this year how to butcher their own deer and stuff like that too, instead of having to go, I mean, all the years I've worked at butcher shops, during deer season, I showed these guys how to do it, and they were like, man, it takes you no time to break a deer down. Well, after you do 400 or 500 of them, a season, it gets pretty easy.
Yeah. Matt, what was the best piece of equipment that you took with you on your first trap line? And then Rob, I want to hear what your like number one go-to tool is for running a trap line as well.
The number one tool. It took me a while to kind of find it, but honestly, it was the basket that I wound up getting. Like it's a 5-gallon bucket, but it holds everything I need. And I would say that was my best tool, because it made it easier, because he'll tell you the first couple weeks I had 2 big duffel bags, trying to carry all these tools in different sets. So for me, it was finding that bag that worked for me, where I could carry what I needed, but not too much.
I think that's fair. There's been many times I've made it into the backcountry to set or check traps, and I didn't have a dedicated bag yet. I was just throwing stuff in and leaving, and realizing that I forgot something very key, like trap setters or bait or lure or whatever the case is. And that's frustrating. So I think that's a great piece of advice. And Rob, what about you? What's for new trappers or experienced trappers that you would suggest people carry with them when they're going out on their trap line?
Well, the way I do mine is I use the handyman bags that you can buy at Home Depot or whatever, the tool bags.
Mm-hmm.
And each tool bag is set up for a specific animal. So I got a bag set up strictly for coyotes with all my coyote tools. I keep 3 or 4 traps in it. My dog proofs are in a bucket I got a thing around the top of the bucket with pockets for my bait and stuff like that. And my fox is the same thing, just a tool bag with all my stuff in it. To me, that's what you need, your bag. You grab your bag, everything's in it, and you go.
I love that idea. I've never really thought about doing species specific bags, but that would probably save me a lot of heartache when I go out and I have stuff for beaver, when I'm trapping for fox or coyotes or wolves and missing stuff. I like that a lot.
Yeah, if you have a Harbor Freight around, you can buy them tool bags. I mean, cheap, big 24-inch tool bag. You can hold a good bit of stuff in there, and I mean, that's basically all I use. That, and I put all my traps in a 5-gallon bucket. Wouldn't carry that bucket and that bag, and I'm on my way.
Awesome. We're down to the last 2 questions. So both of you, what is the most wild experience you've ever had in the woods? That could be from aliens to an animal experience. Like, what's been the craziest thing that's ever happened to you out in the woods?
You want to go first, or you want me to?
Go ahead, you can go.
So it's not super crazy, but it was for me at the time. So my dad hunted when I was a kid, or when he was a kid. Excuse me, but he stopped, because of our business. So I didn't start hunting until I was 20, 21 years old. And I remember I was at my buddy's camp in Punxsutawney, sitting in a tree stand with my bow. And it was the first time I ever saw a black bear with cubs.
Mm.
And I got on the walkie-talkie and called my buddy. I said, I see a bear. It's coming right at me. What do I do? He goes, a what? I said, a bear, big B, bear. There's a bear coming at me. He's like, well, shoot it with my bow. Like, that was, for me, that was probably one of the craziest things, because one, I did not realize, and bears are now my favorite animals. I don't understand how something so big can be so quiet. But that was probably the craziest thing for me, because at the time, that was the first time I had ever seen a bear in the woods. It is right below my tree stand. I am half afraid it is going to climb up there with me, and all I have is an arrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, the bear experiences, again, like you, I didn't grow up in the hunting world, and doing it as an adult, and then like I am addicted to bear hunting now. Like I took some guys out, we shot a huge color-phased bear this spring, but like you said, it's like they appear out of thin air. They could be in buckbrush, the thickest, loudest stuff if a human walks through it, and you'll be sitting there close to last light, and then out of nowhere you've got this monster standing however many yards away from you, and it'll make you first few times really probably need to change your drawers.
I guess mine was in Canada. I had went on a bear hunt in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and I went 2 days after 9/11 happened. And we were up there, and it was the first time that I ever heard a wolf.
Mm.
And the first time that I ever seen a live wolf at 6 feet, tearing a beaver carcass apart. And I'm standing there with a bow, and my guide's going, are you sure you can make this shot? I said, I can make the shot. You just be ready for the other 6 that are going to come running after us when I let this arrow rip. And I shot my first wolf with a bow, but it was exciting. And I'll tell you what, there was a lot of things that were shaking, and some strange smells coming from people that, it was interesting. It was fun to let them get that close and take them to ever do it the first time, and to see them that close was just unbelievable.
Man, wolves are my spirit animal. That's like the first animal I saw in Idaho, and it's something that I've focused on a lot with trapping. But like you said, seeing wolves is crazy. It'll make your hair raise. It's just like the most primal thing when you see them, even at 100 yards, 150 yards, or hear that howl. But then when you come up on one at 6 yards, or like when, I come up on one in a trap, like it's a life-altering experience. And it's also one where you're like, oh, we are not anywhere near the apex of the predator list.
When they come into those beaver carcasses, they know you're there.
That's wild.
They are looking straight through you. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's like they look straight into your soul, and you're, like you said, now, hey, guess what? I got a bow and an arrow, or I got a gun, but this thing, one split second, can have me killed in a heartbeat, and that's when you got to start respecting critters.
Yep. The predator list, man, it's amazing. It's one that needs controlled, especially in Canada and our areas. But boy, it is a fun and eye-opening experience. That's pretty cool. So last question. I always end with a hypothetical. So it's going to be the same hypothetical for both of you. Would you rather give up trapping for the rest of your life and only be able to traditionally archery hunt any species for the rest of your life? Or would you rather give up all other types of hunting and only be able to trap any species you want for the rest of your life?
That question is going to be really tough for you. That's a fairly easy. I love trapping. It is something that I want to continue to do. But my first passion for the outdoors was archery hunting. So if I had to choose, I would give up trapping and be able to still grab that bow and hit the tree stand, because that was what drew me to the outdoors. That is what I put the most time and effort into and what I enjoy the most. So for me, I would give up trapping if I had to. I'd rather not, but if I have to, I'm going to stick with my bow.
That's fair. I see
Yeah,
the wheel spinning.
I'd have to give up the bow. I would give up all my other hunting and stick to trapping my coyotes. You know,
Yeah.
the coyotes and the foxes. I love trapping them. You know, I could care less about catching the raccoons. I know we got to, but you know, the raccoons, I always, you know, I think it's funny because all my buddies, they know when I say, you know, I call the raccoons like the little fat kid at a birthday party, because they're not leaving that trap until they got everything or they're caught, you know, and they're just fun. If you want to take somebody and teach them how to trap, give them a half a dozen of dog-proof traps and some marshmallows and turn them loose. You know, they're going to catch coons and it's going to be fun.
That's awesome. That's good advice for people too who are looking to get their kids involved. But gentlemen, first and foremost, thank you. I learned a lot. I'm really glad we got to meet and make this happen. Where can people find out more about both of you, the show, the podcast? What's all the plugs?
So it is the Keystone Experience, Facebook, Instagram. For now, we're still on TikTok. Rob hasn't got us kicked off yet. TikTok doesn't seem to like animals that are no longer living. We have a YouTube channel, the Keystone Experience. You can head over to the website, keystoneexperience.com. My profiles for Facebook is my name, Matt Pitzer, and this is Rob Warwick. And we always tell anybody, you got a question, ask. We don't know everything, but we're always here willing to help anybody that has questions or try to find the answers if we don't know them. You know, we're a community.
Yeah. Yep. You can find us on Carbon TV too. This will be third week now we're on there, but you can find us on Carbon TV. Same deal. Look me up, Facebook, Instagram. You know, got questions? If I can't figure it out, I'll find somebody that'll help us figure it out.
Yep.
You know?
And a hat tip to both of you guys, because you're honest with that. Like, I reached out, you guys were open and wanted to chat. So other people, you have questions, reach out if you're in the Pennsylvania area and you want to learn about trapping specific, hunting specific things there, or even nationwide. Reach out to these guys. They're awesome. Give them a follow, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast.
Hey, we appreciate it, buddy.